Hey there, everybody, and welcome to another edition of You Gotta Meet, where today my guest is Sue Donnelly, who in a few minutes you're going to find out that we've basically been best friends since the age of 5. And we had an inkling that there had been some history in our past, and yet we did not even know how detailed it was. So it's been a lot of fun, and we're going to be hearing all about that soon. But before we go any further, what I want to do is let you know who Sue really is. She is a managing director at KPMG International and the global head of performance solutions. Her true passion, though, is helping people unlock their own possibilities, bringing practical performance consulting, human-centered design, and coach-like leadership to the challenges organizations face today. Previously, Sue founded PathFinder Solutions, serving clients across industries, and now uses this channel to coach senior executives and their teams as they navigate leadership in an AI-driven world. I'm sure we'll talk about that today. She is a keynote speaker, curriculum advisor at TMU's Chang School of Business, and is a founding member of Be Uninterrupted, volunteering her time to help people, and women specifically, thrive at work and in life. And if that's not enough, she's also a very happily married woman and the proud mom of 3 adult children who are her pride, her prototypes for the way that we learn in life, and her hope for the next generation. And my goodness, if there's anything we need hope. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to meet Sue Donnelly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Stuart. Great to be here. Honored to be here, and loving our bestie relationship kicking off again for this millennium.
Well, look, folks, for those of you who are watching right now or listening, let's just get it right out of the gate. Top to bottom, Sue and I, we just found out that we both went to university pretty much at the exact same time. We're pretty sure that we were, we would call it frosh leaders together. On top of that, we went to high school in London, Ontario. For those Americans who are listening right now, that's a place in Canada, just north of you guys. There's tariffs there too. You'll love it. And we were part of the same student councils. We know some of the same people. And anyway, it's just one of those hilarious moments where you bump into somebody who you feel like maybe you don't know, and you find out that you have this great history. So what a special thing that is for us, Sue. And look at us now. We're adults.
We did it. We're there now, right?
We did it. We've officially arrived. Do you ever find yourself actually from that perspective, we can look back at high school in our earlier years and laugh about the house parties we used to go to. And I was even joking around about bush bashes where kids would go into the forest with a 6-pack of beer and try to, hide from their parents. And that was the only place that we could go. Does it seem weird for you now to be this adult who has those kinds of accolades, that kind of bio, grown children, when it just seems like yesterday that you were just, maybe had a crush on the boy that was, in the class next door?
Yeah. And it's, there's so much that we end up on autopilot in our life, and time goes quick. And I think it goes even quicker as you get older somehow. But it's always fun to look back at what are those things, even just in thinking about some of the things we might talk about, finding some of those roots of how did I get here and what are some of the paths. Mentioned 2 adult children. My 2 youngest are actually both at Western, which is a university, of course, in London, Ontario.
Right.
And so their stomping ground is a place that, was very much part of my formative years. And so it's funny, some of the things that just don't change, and then other things where, I'm expecting certain things of them or from them because of where they are. And they're like, no, Mom, that is not the thing anymore. And then you realize, that was 35 years ago. Fair.
Right.
Fair point.
Yeah, exactly. I remember one time when I was a kid, I was playing out in the lawn with my friends, and one of the kids asked me for whatever reason how old my dad was. And I didn't know. And so I ran inside and I said, Dad, how old are you? And he said he was 40. And I remember, I'm not kidding, feeling devastated because I thought, oh my God, my dad is so old and so ancient. And of course, now I'm 52 years old and well past,
Yes.
much more than 20% past that age that he was at that time. And I sometimes have these, I'm just, I don't know, it's my personality. I guess sometimes I'm a little obsessive compulsive about things, but I start becoming like a little worried about, how much time I do have left now because of that. And so do you find yourself looking back and going, okay, hold on. 35 years, as you just said, just passed.
Yeah.
I'm gone in like the next 10 seconds. Without sounding
Yeah.
morbid, do you think
Yeah.
about your demise?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think about it in a couple of different ways because same as what you're doing, you think back to, okay, well, what do I remember of my parents when they were, I'm 53, a year older than
Mhm.
you. So what do I remember of them at 53 and what were they doing and how am I measuring along the things I want to achieve? How is my health? How are these things aligning to what I set out to do
Right.
all those years ago? So doing it that way, but also thinking if I am more than halfway, maybe I'm only halfway, what can I do about it now? That is, what am I doing? What's helping me get to this only being the halfway point? And
Right.
what am I going to regret doing right now? So it's been a really big focus for us in our family as a whole. My husband and I, in particular, he's had a diagnosis of MS about 3 years ago. That
Mm.
really shook us up
Wow.
and really actually challenged us to say, hey, this isn't quite what we envisioned for ourselves at this age. We're just getting to that point where adult kids, lots of opportunity,
Yeah.
maybe some, the retirement or options around what would retirement would look like for us. We can travel and things. None of that matters if we don't have the health. So it's a really big
Yes.
part of it, and thinking about what is our longevity from this point forward.
Oh man, it's such a big deal. Without sounding too morbid or too depressing, I think though it's poignant and important to what we're saying. I had a situation where a couple of years ago now, I guess it's coming up on 2 years, my best friend sadly passed away because of leukemia. And he, it's that classic story. He had young children, two daughters. I think they were 6 and 8 at the time. And one day just felt a little bit of a shortness of breath. And then next thing you know, 3 months later, he's gone. And you go, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
it is so insane to think about how quickly time goes. And what a almost disservice we do as a species in not making that such an important aspect of our learning from day one. Like you and I were never taught in school, and they still don't teach it today, I can assure you, because I actually have younger children,
yeah,
about how precious life is and how short life is. And sadly, we have to go through these things in order to figure it all out.
yeah, yeah. And so much of the way our society is set up right now is actually in direct contrast to what makes us healthy. We think about, I don't want to go down too far down with COVID, but how COVID was a physical health concern, but I'm far more concerned about the mental impact that had on our health and
Mhm.
our lack of connection as humans now.
Yeah.
And the way that our digital worlds around us, whether you're talking, just technology and things, whether you're talking social media, whether you're talking AI, all of those things are really changing the chemistry of our brains. They're changing how we connect with people, whether we know how to connect with people. And at the end of the day, as humans, we're meant to be connecting, and that is our number one channel towards health. And it is
Yes.
the number one thing that it seems at every turn, we're almost trying to turn off that part of us.
I know.
And I think it doesn't matter the age too, that our kids, especially through COVID, lost a whole bunch of maturity around what is it to be social, to be connected, to have empathy, to be able to lean on friends and family and ask for help. We don't know how to
Yes.
do that anymore. And to be able
Hmm.
to show up for someone whether it's going to get repaid or not, all those things. And I think it
Yeah.
really impacts our brain impacts our gut impacts our longevity. We're back to the
Yeah.
same thing, right?
Well, it's funny how I always find this really, I guess, frustrating, and how often I go through this with my potential clients and even existing clients, where I'll be speaking about human connection, and I'll be talking about all of the personal benefits from connecting with others, whether it's helping the way that we sleep, or the way that we fight disease, or the way that we stave off disease, the way in which that it helps our immune system thrive. And then, of course, from a corporate perspective, I'm really showing them that when we are connected, productivity goes up, innovation goes up, collaboration goes up, sick days go down, absenteeism goes down, talent retention increases. I mean, it just everything, every box that a corporation or an organization wants to check is checked through, investing in human connection. And then what do? They'll just go and say, well, yeah, no, we do that. How do you do that? We go bowling once a year.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
well,
Escape rooms.
yeah, that's right. We hit an escape room. We go axe throwing.
Yeah.
Every time it's someone's birthday, we bring them into the boardroom. We sing happy birthday and right back to our desk. And all those are things that we should do, of course. But it's amazing to me that it's such a convincing game of something that is so obvious clearly to someone like yourself. I mean, when I think about you having even adult children, they're still, of course, quite young.
Yeah.
What does the discussion look like around, you as a parent trying to guide them away from being stuck on their screens and deliberately engaging in meaningful interactions with other people?
Yeah. You know, because my kids are a little bit spread out, my oldest is 28,
Okay.
son, and then my next son is 22, and then
Mm,
my daughter's 20. So they're all considered Gen Z, but at different ages and ends of that. And even just how they use social media is different from where they were. So my oldest was part of that first group that had social media
right.
and had to live through some of the dangers of it and the repercussions of it, things that, like, that picture that you put up is going to stay forever. And
Yeah.
they were the generation that discovered what going viral would actually mean. And we discovered
Right.
that through them, right? Whereas then my younger two, by the time they were kind of going through the school system, there was a little bit around, they had to get their digital license. And so they had to do a little bit of learning and things like that. Um, so they've had different experiences. What I would say is my kids are relatively social. That doesn't mean they don't have some social anxieties. I think, again, in this world now, especially with everything around us, there's a lot of that. But overall, they do connect really well. Um, but there is a reluctance to do a lot of things in person.
Yeah.
My oldest, his career path, he was out of university, went to Laurier. So I got
Oh,
one at
wow.
Laurier,
Well
which
done.
is
Well
great.
done.
But his career trajectory was very much going to be in, supporting university students in student life and things like that, and was working for Queen's University over in the UK. That ended. He was sent home. He really focused on finding more work and finding the next job and did that very, very quickly. But, and then went into some corporate jobs. He never spent a single day in person with a single person he worked at two different companies.
Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And, and so he's very outgoing, very, strong communication skills, really was making an impact,
Hmm.
but didn't have that connection. So there's parts of what can really come from the benefits of being in a corporate environment and having a team around you and things like that, that he just never had a chance to experience. And
Man.
so that's now played into shifting, what does he want out of a career? And it's
Right.
certainly not a desk job, 9 to 5, sitting behind a computer
Right.
in his living room, right? Or in
Yeah.
his home office. So that's really shaping how he's leveraging, the opportunities that are coming his way, and the way computer and digital and things like that have shaped what he's doing.
Right.
And then my younger two are very much a blend of, they leverage the digital when they can, but they are really big on connection and community. In
Good.
fact, my 22-year-old son started a run club
Oh, nice.
so it's called London Run Club. And the goal there was on that in-person connection. But this is where this generation, I mentioned they give me so much hope because, when you and I were going out in
Yeah.
our university years, going
Hmm.
out was the goal. And, it wasn't necessarily a very sober night, let's say.
Yeah, fair.
But
Yeah.
that was the way where we socialized, and it
Yeah.
had some safety to it that it doesn't have
Yeah.
today.
Right.
But that was just what we did then. Now, this generation is really seeking other ways to connect. And
Right.
so it's more the afternoon DJ, it's the
Yeah.
coffee cafes, it's the
Hmm.
run clubs, go clubbing kind of thing is
Yeah.
this kind of thing. And so they're seeking, and I think they're thirsty for that connection and community that we've lost over the last 10, 15 years for all the reasons we've talked about. And they're really seeking that out and
Yeah.
finding different ways to do it. And it's connected better in many ways to health and to what's
Mm.
actually good for us. So that's
Yeah.
why I say, like, this generation gets a lot of slack as far as
Yeah.
what they're doing and how they're
Hmm.
doing it. I don't buy it. What I
Right.
see, my three prototypes and their circles, they're onto something that I'm
Yeah.
I'm taking some lessons from.
That's so refreshing to hear because, of course, it is easy to go down that doomsday path of assuming that, every young person wants to stare at their phone. And listen, there's no shortage of that. I see it in the
Yeah,
city here in New York every day, especially young women, it seems like, where walking down the street and staring at the phone, I find to be fascinating. And when they pass you, I probably shouldn't, but I always glance. I'm thinking, what are you possibly looking at? Quite often, I'll see shopping being flipped through, or I'll see it's the Instagram, the Snapchats, and that kind of
yeah,
stuff. And I thought, man, it's like, you know, you're in New York City. People travel from around the world to be able to see all of the stuff that you're passing right now. And
yeah,
instead, you'd rather just be staring at a phone or on a New York subway. And of course, everyone's on their phone. I've even been trying to introduce a new term that I've created called Can You Know Phone? And I was even thinking about getting a T-shirt made called "Can You
I
Know
like it.
Phone?"
Yeah,
And so, because I think that's what it comes down to, right? Like, if you think about just the importance of just being conscious of when you do and when you don't, the way that I'm sure your son, who started that running club, thinks, okay, there's a time for me to want to be looking at my phone and just checking out and using it as an entertainment device. And there are other times when I want to be running and conversing and interacting with
yeah,
people. And it's great that they're seeing it tied into their health. I mean, I was thinking about this not too long ago about how, back in like the 19, I don't know, 20s, 30s, 40s, where there would be billboards all around major cities promoting smoking cigarettes. And
mhm,
you'd even see like a doctor sitting in a doctor's office, and he would say, I always recommend Camel's cigarettes for my patients who have asthma. I mean, I'm not making this up. These are real advertisements. It helps them breathe better. Well, I mean, fast forward 100 years later, and we woke up and realized of all the ill effects that smoking causes,
yeah,
and hence we don't have those billboards anymore. So I sometimes find myself looking up at billboards in any city I happen to be in, and it'll be something like from some sort of major, let's say, telephone provider, and it'll be the family, and like the one kid's on the couch with a laptop, and the dad's on his phone, and the mom's on her tablet, and every person's on a device, and it says, "Bring the true joy to your family this Christmas. Get the whatever company bundle."
yeah,
And it's like, no, all the research shows that if you get that bundle, you don't bring joy. You bring
no,
higher rates of depression, higher rates of suicide, higher rates of
anxiety.
divorce, anxiety, you name
Yeah,
it. And it's like, I think that soon we're going to really wake up to
ah,
the point where
yeah,
when you talk about your son who didn't even see anybody for for his first two jobs, I can't even say it without even chuckling. Um, I wonder at one day if whether or not we're going to see the government, even regulating businesses to enforce people to come into work in order to interact with each other.
yeah.
I mean, it sounds somewhat draconian, but perhaps we need to do that.
Yeah, well, and I think there's so much in this.
Yeah.
One of the things I think that we'll shift back to, and I think a lot of these things, the pendulum swings, right?
Right.
But when you think about um, what community used to be. We used to live in smaller towns, family were local. We had our church, we had our school, we had our volunteer things. They were all sort of around us.
Yeah.
And we had all these different ways of communicating, of coming together. Even just the way, I mean, look at New York City, the way sidewalks are built and the way the walk-ups are built. You have
Hmm.
businesses on the main level and then homes up above. Those were built to have community. People are walking around. You see people, you say hi in the streets. Even if it's Manhattan, you
Yeah.
probably see some similar people as you're wandering
Yeah.
around.
Hmm.
And that's what we were designed to do. We weren't necessarily designed to live, on acre properties away from each other and things like
Yeah.
that. So, but that's how community used to be. Then we've kind of come into this digital world where you're free to move wherever you want, almost in the world. You can still stay connected through video and things like that.
Hmm.
But church isn't as prevalent.
Yeah.
Community isn't as prevalent. We don't walk places in the same way. We're not on the sidewalks.
Hmm.
And so, where do we look for that community? We look for it, the one place, it's at work. And so, this
Yes.
is why leaders are being asked to show up different. This is
Hmm.
why I once had a leader say to me, why does this person need me to say hi to them every morning? We see each other every day at work. Why do they need that special hello?
Right.
And it's because for some people, that is the only community they're left with in our
Yes.
world today. And
Yes.
so I think this is the beautiful thing about being human, and nature always wins.
Yep.
Our nature is that we are going to come back to community, and we are
Yes.
coming back to community, and we are seeking it.
Yes.
My only concern is coming back to your point around the digital family and we're all on our devices and things, is the underlayer to that. What's it done and doing to our brains? And
Right.
it's the dopamine hits, right?
Yeah.
And it's the more you expect those dopamine hits, the more your brain is being taught. And I'm not a neuroscientist or anything like that. I love to geek out on this stuff.
Yeah, me too.
But we're getting used to and expecting a higher and higher and higher level of dopamine,
Right.
and we're getting it from all those things. So,
Yes.
and that's what's causing all the anxiety and things like that, is because our brain then almost feels like it's in fight or flight all the time.
Yeah.
And so it needs the dopamine all the time to help level that out. And
Right.
we're getting it in a really false, non-human way.
Yeah.
So,
That's
I,
so
I
interesting.
truly believe we're going to shift back
Yeah.
into relying on community again. It's our
Hmm.
natural place of being.
Yeah.
And I think it's, we're getting back there as we go.
Well, when you just said fight or flight just there, it reminded me of an interesting study, a fascinating study that I had read. And of course, for me, like, I mean, being the founder of an organization called the Human Connection Group,
Yeah.
I geek out on this all the time. And this one study that I had come across, which really just blew me away, where they were talking about if you, let's say 10,000 years ago, and you were part of a tribe or whatever your very small community was, you would go out and you would be, let's say, hunting for bison, or you got to kill something so your community can eat that
Yeah.
week. And in some of those situations, you may be separated from the pack and you lose that human connection with the people that you're hunting with. Well, in those moments, you would automatically go into a state of fight or flight, and because you don't know what's going to happen. And so when we go into a state of fight or flight, we have these physiological reactions, of course. So the first thing that will happen is that we will have blood be moved away from parts of the body that don't need it and toward parts of the body that might need it. So the one area that it'll go to is towards your eyes, that will help you have sharper vision so you can see the bear lurking in the corner.
Yeah.
It'll move it to the brain so that you can make quicker decisions if needed. And it moves blood to the legs in case you actually have to run. And that has been happening to us for thousands and thousands of years. Then, of course, after, let's say, 30, 45 minutes, you get reunited with the pack, your tribe, and you move out of that state of fight or flight, and the blood goes back to where it was drawn from. Well, guess where the blood gets drawn from? With the part that doesn't need it is digestion. That is
Okay.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
physiological area
Yeah.
of our body that can take a second and go, okay, fine, you can take my blood and just give it back to me when you're done. And so that was a really interesting evolutionary way of us being able to function in society. Well, fast forward 10,000 years later from those hunter gatherer years, and here we are today as a species that researchers say that we are experiencing loneliness if we are not connected in one of three ways. Okay, so the first is that you're not connected to your closest confidant. In many cases, that's your significant other,
Yeah.
but it could be a brother or a sister. Number two, you're not connected to your friends. You see them, you go out for beers and wings, but you don't really like come away feeling like you actually had any kind of meaningful conversations.
Yeah.
And number three, you're not connected to your community. And if you're not connected in any one of those three ways, what's happening is that it is, from an evolutionary perspective, no different than being separated from the pack 10,000 years ago. And so each day, we've got hundreds of thousands of people waking up where they, in fact, are going through the physiological reaction to not being connected to the pack, thus putting them into a state of fight or flight, thus moving blood away from digestion and into other parts of the body that don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
Well, guess
Yeah.
what? The number one reason is that people call in sick for work: stomach issues.
Yeah.
And guess
Yeah.
what? The number one reason people visit emergency rooms in North America: stomach issues.
Yeah.
And so we look at this and we've got things like colitis and irritable bowel syndrome and all kinds of
Any of these
digestion.
inflammatory diseases. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And you can now trace it back to the very thing that you just said, which is our lack of connection to our community.
Yeah.
And so you've got people waking up every single day convinced that they've got a bear lurking around the corner when there's no such scenario. And it's, of course, having a dramatic impact on our physical health.
Yeah. 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 And then that's really fascinating thinking about that, and where the blood goes. Because the other thing I bring in a lot of the work that I do within our leadership and in my coaching work and things is, what are some of the hacks that we have in our brain to help bring down that fight or flight?
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, when we're in fight or flight, the prefrontal cortex is just not able to power up in the way we need. Well, we need that for ideas. We need it for decision making. We need it for commitment to things. We need it for our health and wellness, right?
Right.
So the very part of our brain that we need to get through whatever the challenge is in front of us, whether it's, coming up with a new strategy, or if it's making a decision on this thing that my team needs, or whether it's just, what do I do next on this mile-long to-do list? If we're in fight or flight, none of that can happen.
Right.
And so some of the favorite hacks are just, again, it's back to, core things like, have you taken more than a shallow breath? You're in that shallow breath mode, right?
Yes.
Where's the blood going right now?
Right.
So, grounding yourself, just one deep breath, can help change that. But one of the biggest things that helps is when you ask or get asked a question. How simple is that?
Right.
And we're usually so much in autopilot, especially in my experience in the corporate world and different leaders that I work with. And we're on to the next thing. We got to go. It is so much easier for me to just tell you what you need to do and
Yeah,
off we
right.
go. But tell puts us automatically in that we're scanning for safety, right? Is this a saber-toothed tiger on the way for me? When you
Yeah.
tell me something, my brain is thinking about it in that way.
Right.
But if you can ask me a question, especially a how or what question that doesn't come with judgment, all of a sudden, both of our brains are activated up here. The fight or flight gets powered down.
Right.
And we're in a whole new place to be able to co-create something together.
Yes.
Guess what? That's community. That's connection.
That's right. Yeah.
So and all it comes from is a deep breath and ask a question.
Yes. Yeah. I would imagine that from like a coaching perspective, you've very much learned the power of asking the right types of questions and seeing those light bulbs go off with the people that you've coached where they had the answers within them. They just didn't know that they were there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that unlocking is 100% what I am here for, and love when it happens with me, because I get coaching as well.
Yeah.
But when that happens for someone, and it's as simple as the fact that it gets stuck back here.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in speaking through it, our brain processes differently
Mm,
when we say something out loud or when we're
right,
asked that question. We fire up that part of the brain. We can think about it and examine it in a different way than if it's just me sitting in a corner thinking about it. And
right.
sitting in a corner thinking about it is really hard to do. It's why our brain takes the easy way out and picks up a phone or now
Yeah,
goes to ChatGPT and asks a question, right?
this is
But
it.
when you can have that conversation, and it almost doesn't matter what question I ask. Like I say,
Mm,
I try and use what and how because it removes that judgment of why.
right.
But then from there, almost any question, the brain's going to be like, "Ooh, I want to find the answer to that."
Interesting.
Yeah.
What kinds of
So I
questions?
just get to hold the space for them and
Yeah,
ask the question.
right.
And then you can see, and then my next job is to not be the next one to speak,
Yes,
which is the
yes.
hardest part,
I
right?
know. Oh my
We don't
God.
like silence.
And it's funny too because I really have always struggled with the awkward silence,
Yeah.
and whenever I've been interviewed for podcasts or on TV or radio shows, it's always the best interviewers who will say something and then they just pause and give me that extra second, and I'll go. And the other thing I want to say about that, and
Yeah.
that's where they get the gold.
Yes.
It's the next layer that I didn't
Yeah.
realize was actually there. So when you are trying to pull the best out of the people that you work with, whether it's someone you manage, whether it's someone you coach, what are some of your favorite questions that you like to ask that you have found like historically have pulled some of the greater aha moments?
One of my favorites is usually a little later into the process. But it's what question haven't I asked you?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, because there's a bit of an expectation of, what do you want to work on? Okay, what are the options around this? Where are
Mhm.
you stuck? What do you think is happening? And then when you get to that, there's always something that they haven't brought forward, and that they really just, it's kind of that get real moment. And
Yes.
then they say, well, I kind of thought you'd ask me about X,
Mm,
or what this is bringing up for me is Y. And they may or
mm.
may not shape it in the form of a question, but then I
Right.
can do that with them. And
Yes.
then, like you say, that's where the gold comes out. So that's one of my favorite ones.
That's a really good one. One of the things I saw in your LinkedIn profile that I thought was so neat, and I'm going to butcher this, but something to do with the imposter syndrome certification, like
Yeah, practitioner. Yes.
practitioner. And so, when you are coaching and you are asking these kinds of questions, do you see the imposter syndrome like being a major challenge that most people face?
Yes, and I also have to be really careful that I'm not putting my confirmation bias around that too, right? Because
Sure.
I've gone through that and leveraged that a lot and have seen it a lot, have felt it a lot myself,
Yeah.
feel it a lot. I'll put that in
Hmm.
present tense. Um, you have to be careful that I'm not, yeah, I have to be careful I'm not associating one thing with another and labeling that. And I really try not to use the label. I use the approach to it. I talk about the cycles of it. I talk
Hmm.
about the automatic negative thoughts that we tend to come across. We might
Hmm.
explore past because a lot of it comes from how we were raised and how we
Yeah.
define success and what we were known for in our family.
Right.
A lot of it comes from that inner critic voice,
Hmm.
and sometimes it comes from just that surprise of, hey, how far did I get with this? Imagine little old me.
Yeah.
I got here, so I better not let anybody know that I actually don't belong here, right? It's all those kinds of things packed
Right.
in. So I focus more on the what's happening and what are some tools and techniques that we can use to stop the loops that we end in with there, than labeling it, okay, you have imposter syndrome and here's what
Sure.
we're going to do.
Yeah, exactly. You need to go get some medication. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
over. It's over for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to always, because I've suffered from imposter syndrome my entire life. It was always that somebody would pay me to go on stage and to speak to
Yeah.
their people for an hour. Like, don't they know that I bite my fingernails? And
Yeah.
don't they know that
Yeah.
I have ugly moments? And it is something that I used to always think that if I would just reach a certain level of success,
Hmm.
that I would finally be able to beat the imposter syndrome. I'd be like, well, look, I mean, now I've got this much money in the bank and that many awards and this many accolades, and I've written that many books. Surely now that I can just coast now and I could just produce and do things. And I realized you just level up to your next level of imposter syndrome because
Yeah.
now you're playing
Yeah.
in a whole new playing field, quite frankly. And so from that perspective, what do you find your approach to be as you go through your own levels of anxiety in life, where I mean now you've got this really impressive job title which you didn't have 20 years ago, and as your job title is always I guess become more impressive, how have you just allowed yourself to just sit with your success and not kind of fall down that path that so many do, which is maybe I don't belong here?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think there's two things. One is, and I do this for myself. I do this as a big part of a lot of my work. It's probably another of my favorite questions is how do you define your success?
Right.
And when you unpack that, most of us don't have our answer for it.
Mm,
We have we were taught what success looks like in whatever our growing up structure looked like.
mm,
um, if we went to college or university or into the trades or start our own business, there's success coming from what that community thinks success looks like.
mm,
If we're into, especially in a regulatory business, professional services that I spend a lot of my time in, there's sort of the ladder of this is what success looks like,
right.
but that's everybody else's definition. And
Mm,
yet, it's the very thing that guides us on most of our decisions throughout
yeah.
our whole life.
Right.
So we're using somebody else's definition to guide the decisions we make. And no wonder it starts to erode us and feeling like I'm not getting to that thing because there's always something else in that definition. But if you bring it back to what's my definition of success? How will I say at the end of the day, how will I measure that I've gotten to where I want to be? Then you open it up to all the things that you are, and so many of them that it's almost impossible to measure that much stuff and say, oh, I am where I need to be and where I want to
Right.
be.
Interesting.
um, and then the other part, one of the things, like you say, is sort of chasing all those things. So it's quite ironic that I took an imposter syndrome practitioner
Yeah.
certification in order to not chase titles anymore or chase, letters behind the name or whatever.
Right. Right.
But it's aligning to what's the purpose of that for me? How is that
Hmm.
aligned to what I've defined as success? And is that going to give me the next way of me aligning to my purpose? Or is it an external voice? Is it an external thing that I'm trying to have that so that I feel like I've arrived, or so that others
Right.
know that no, actually, you should listen to me, or I have the
Hmm.
gravitas that
Yeah.
I'm going to have. And so it's just, again, it's back to that alignment
Yes.
and purpose and what's the reason for doing it,
Hmm.
bringing it back to that. And then if that's if that thing is going to serve that, go for it.
This is it. This is it. What then do you, or how do you, even if it's loosely, define success for yourself today? And I would say, there's obviously many categories. You could say, well, does it mean to be a successful mom? What does it mean to be a successful partner? Let's go with leadership because that's what we were speaking about. What
Yeah.
does successful leadership look like for you, or a successful career, however you want to answer that?
Yeah. Well, career's been funny because what I defined as what my success should look like coming out of like university wasn't what the universe aligned for me,
Right.
you know?
How do they differ?
Well, I thought I was gonna, write the write the P&G test and write the KPMG test
Right.
and then pick which corporate company I was going to go to and work my way up the ladder. That's what I
Okay.
thought I was doing.
Right.
And that's not what fell into place. And I had an opportunity to work with a very small company in sales that only lasted a short time. And then I ended up in a tech sales place, which got me into the learning space. And
Oh,
all of a
okay.
sudden something clicked that, no, wait a
Right.
sec, learning is my thing.
Mm.
And then there was an opportunity to either go full time as a facilitator or start my own business.
Okay.
And that was not the path that I thought I was going on to do that. So I had my own
Right.
business for 20 years as an
Okay.
entrepreneur and would connect with people from school and things like that and hear their titles and hear their things. And then, I felt like, oh, I don't have a title, I don't have a thing, but I have my own business. Does that
Right.
count for? No, that can't count for something.
Pretty
If
successful.
Nita did
Yeah.
it, it can't mean anything.
Right.
And then eventually I had to redefine that because I was either selling myself short or I was going the other way and I was overselling what I was doing. And neither of those things were serving me. And so
Right.
that's kind of those early years. What I'm finding is, the way I define success is, are the people around me able to thrive?
Right.
And now I can do that with my own team. And sometimes the answer is, yeah, I'm there.
Yeah.
And sometimes the answer is no, you've missed something, or you're not standing up for the things you need to, or you've missed someone along the way. Same thing in the coaching work that I do. Um, it's allowing me to really reflect on not only how am I helping individuals and leaders and teams thrive in what they're doing, but it's such a beautiful mirror back on, this thing I'm easily able to spot over here in this leader or in this team.
Right.
Hey, what's happening here? And
Interesting.
it's a great way to reflect back, and I'm learning what kind of leader I want to be when I grow up as I do
Yeah.
that work too.
Are you able to, a curiosity hit me when you were speaking there. Are you able to take these lessons that you learn in your business life and as an entrepreneur, and have you been able to parlay them, or have you noticed how they parlay, let's say, in the way in which you try to successfully build a meaningful relationship with your husband or with your kids or with your friends?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So much so that, like, my kids will say to me, "Mom, I just need your advice. I don't want you to coach me."
Right. Yeah,
Right when
exactly.
they want that one specific, just give me the
Yeah, I
answer.
want you to write down your fear. Okay, we're going to create an action plan
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
How are we feeling about this? What is
Right.
coming up for you right now? What do you think your options
Yeah,
might
just tell me
be?
what to do. Tell me what
Yeah,
to
what's your
do.
first next step on this?
All right. Yeah.
Enough.
Yeah, I am same way.
But it truly has, it's helped me ask a question without um, listening, ask a question and then listen for the response, as opposed to
Mm,
asking a question, assuming I know the answer, and waiting for them to be done talking so that I can share my brilliance, right?
right. Yeah,
So it's
same.
put me in a much better listening position. The other thing too is some of the powerful things that come with a coach like mindset. And that's
Hmm.
much, yes, I am a coach, but what I hope to bring to people is coach like, the thing about questions that we were talking about. But the art of ritual, the art of reflection, those are the things our brain is so hungry for
Hmm.
and that we have a lot of fun with. Sometimes I get the eye rolls and the groans. Oh, here she goes. She's going to ask that
Yeah,
question.
right.
But when they were kids, we used to always do best and worst. So
Okay.
best part of your day, worst part of your day.
Yep.
And it kicked off the conversation. It gave us something to root to, and it gave us some of those insights into things.
Mm,
Um, Now where we use that is, we're coming up on the holidays, so just
yeah.
before they head back to school, they know that on Sunday brunch, the day before they go back to school, I will be asking, well, what surprised you most about the holidays this year,
Oh, I love
or
it.
what's one moment you'd relive from our
Yeah.
holidays this year?
Oh, I
It's
love
it's
that.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that gives them that power of reflection. It makes our connections so much better.
Yeah.
And between my husband and I, he's my best coach. And
Mm,
he's not learned all of that stuff in the formal way that I have,
right.
but in so many ways, he's even a better coach than me. He's coaching me all the time. I
Yeah.
like to think some of that's a reflection back of
Sure.
what we do, but it's just, it's the way we connect, and it has made us a very connected family. My husband
Mm,
and I are going on 25 years next year,
nice.
and it's because of those kinds of connections,
Mm.
that's gotten us through all the ups and downs that when life is lifing.
Yeah, life is life. It's funny do you recognize though the very fact that you would at the end of a holiday ask questions such as, if you could relive one moment from the holiday, do you recognize that you are very much like a one percenter, if you will, that does that? Because in all of my time now in studying this and talking about this, I used to think that what you just use as an example was like more common than it is. I think, well, I mean, I know that not everyone does it, but most people would ask those kinds of questions at the end of
Yeah.
a holiday. And I've now discovered after doing, significant number of years of researching this, it's like 1 in 1,000 people who would ever even think to ask that. Like when I'm doing my keynotes sometimes, I'll throw out example questions to the audience. For example, I might say, for those of you who have young children, I know that when they come home from school, the first thing you want to ask them is, how was school today? And I
Yeah.
say, they never tell you how school was. They tell you what school was. And they basically give you a chronological kind of details of the things that had happened. Well, I scored this goal and I high-fived that kid and these kinds of things. I said, but if you were to rephrase the questions and say things like, at what moment did you feel most proud of yourself today at school?
Yeah.
Or was there a moment where you helped somebody at school today and what did you do? Or was there a moment today that you felt scared and why did you feel scared? All of a sudden, you change the question. Of course, you change the answer. The same is true in a relationship. I'll often say to my audience, when was the last time anyone here asked their husband or wife, what do I do that makes you feel the most loved?
Yeah.
And, a
Yeah.
simple question like that is going to spark a potentially 2 hour conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you feel like on some level, I mean, for sure, the great thing is that you're teaching your children the power of asking important questions, just by doing it, and they're going to mimic your behavior through time. But do you feel like you just learned to be that kind of one percenter in the questions that you ask through the courses that you had taken, or is it a natural just curiosity and fascination by humans that got you there?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. I would
Mm,
also say it's the way I was raised too, right?
mm,
We sat at the table every night for dinner.
yeah,
And it's some of those things, that conversation, I can't remember my parents asking a specific question like that, but
right.
certainly we were at the table. We didn't have to have phones. The only phone was the one big one on the cord that you had to
Yeah.
take into another room and
Yep.
close the door and hope that nobody would steal it
I
on you,
I
right?
love that. Yeah.
So it's rooted in that. It's rooted in, I come from big families on both sides.
Mm,
So it's rooted in the fact that there's family and connection, and
mm,
we ask questions and we tell our stories and we reflect
right.
on the day in that way. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's where it started for me.
Hmm.
Um, and then, again, it's the power of how our brain shows up for us. And
Yeah.
just that switch of question is where we are able to reflect and learn. And our brain
Yeah.
wants to reflect and learn.
Yeah.
We're just so much on autopilot that, that question, I love that, asking a kid or a spouse, as adults,
Mm,
how was your day?
yeah.
We go through chronologically, right? Because it's
Yeah.
easy for our brain. We don't have to think to
Hmm.
say what we've done.
Yeah.
But as soon as we switch that question and make our brain power up, that's where the magic happens. So
Yes. Yeah.
it really does switch it up just with a question. Just with a question.
I often refer to it as being the conductor of conversation. And I said,
I
you
love
you
that.
can, based on the questions you ask, you can move the music quickly or slow and, heavy or not. And I think really, as you said earlier on in this conversation, just the importance of building a space by which you can invite people in to have these kinds of conversations. In fact, one of the big comments I get from my audience is, well, if I'm asking all these questions that you're telling me to ask, I feel like I'm going to make that other person feel like they're being interrogated or interviewed. And I get that, because quite often people get their defenses up, like, well, what's your agenda here? Why are you asking me all these
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah.
And I've started just trying to create that space with individuals by telling them why I'm creating it. So I'll say, "Hey, look, I just want you to know I'm super fascinated in someone like yourself, and I've never met anyone who's had a job like yours. And would you be okay if I asked you a bunch of questions about it? Because I'm just really interested." Where what I've done now is I've given them my agenda. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to find out how much money they make. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
do it because I'm trying to get a job. I'm doing it because I'm just interested in who they are. And then now I've complimented them as well. And I've said,
Yeah.
"Hey, can I invite you into this space? Because I'd really love to get to know you more." And I feel like that is something that more of us should just be okay with doing. Whether we're sitting next to somebody on the subway or on a plane or at a conference and we're chatting with them and just say, "Hey, I would just, I don't know a lot of people from Winnipeg. I'd love to ask you some questions about where you live and how you came to be and all that kind of stuff." And I think that's just a great way of creating that space so that you can invite people to come join you.
Yeah, I love that because it's about trust, right? I
Hmm.
need to feel like again, it all comes back to my brain scanning this question for safety. Why
Yeah.
are you asking me about Winnipeg and what's your
Hmm.
next move, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if you can establish that trust and give a little bit of that why,
Hmm.
then you've got this open playground to be able to go into that.
Yeah.
And it's part of my work is in bringing coach like leadership. I mentioned that kind of term before.
Right.
That's a core part of our strategy at KPMG is building coach like leaders
Mm.
because we all need this opportunity for someone to hold the space and ask us a couple questions so we can get the brain working and
Yeah.
we can play with that curiosity, but we don't have what we do is we say to somebody, can I just get your advice for a minute?
Mm.
We don't actually want their advice. What we really
Right.
want to say is, Stuart, can you just sit with me for a few minutes and ask me a bunch of questions so I can work out something that's stuck in my head? So,
Right.
but we
Yes.
don't have the language behind that. But the more
Hmm.
we're talking about coach like leadership and the power of questions, the more people have in their language, hey, could you just coach me for a minute? Can I can
Yeah.
I do a little bit of coaching with you for 10 minutes? Or why don't you meet
Hmm.
up with that person and just do a little bit of coaching? And
Yeah.
now it's the reason why. It helps build that trust and it
Hmm.
allows somebody in to be able to ask these questions, and it works for both, right? It solves your curiosity, but I
Yeah.
bet you that person that you're asking on the plane about Winnipeg is thinking about Winnipeg in a whole different way now
Yeah.
because of the questions and the thought provoking that you provided them.
Right.
And they've probably enjoyed that plane ride a lot more than had they been scrolling through their phone or
Yes. I've always said
whatever
that
whatever
human
else we do.
human beings are the best television show of all time. As long as you ask the right questions, you get to flip around between all their channels, and
Yes,
right,
yes,
and
yeah,
they don't even know that they have all these shows there, and it's just you
yeah,
just gotta pull them
yeah.
out.
I love that.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you, what is one question that if you could have it answered, and maybe it's a question that no one knows the answer to, what would you like to know? Any question you want it to be answered, this is your chance. I'll pretend I'm God for 5 seconds and I'll tell you that I have the answer, which I
That
won't.
you have the answer.
No, I,
Oh,
I won't have
you've
the
got
answer,
me
but
thinking.
I would imagine there's so many that cross your mind.
Yeah, you know what's coming? I don't know exactly what the question is, but it's how how do I help make everybody around me? In particular, I'm thinking family, but it's also, my work family, the people that I touch. How do I help them all be okay and care for myself as well? I feel like
Oh,
that's the biggest thing I'm always after is
like
helping
the
others,
balance.
but not losing myself in that because then it
Mm.
ends up backfiring on me and I need what I need. And then I'm doing the opposite with people as I as I push away. How was that
That's a
for?
that's a good one. Wow. Yeah, and it's a tough one to answer. And I would imagine that, those who are listening or watching have that same question too, right? Which is, I think that back to kind of almost some of this meaning of life stuff that we've been speaking about around human connection. Well, another part of it is serving others. And in when we connect with someone, when we ask them interesting questions about their lives, we're serving them by making them feel seen and heard and noticed and that they matter and all these other
Yeah.
great things. Well, we also can sometimes get so connected to our need to serve others that we've stopped serving ourselves
Yes.
in the process.
Yeah.
And then that also comes down to other, psychological layers to ourselves of like, why do I feel the need? I need to, always be seen as someone who serves others. Like, why do I always have to like be taking care of everybody all the time?
Yeah. It's probably one of the biggest turns for me or pivots for me from even though learning and coaching are so closely connected and the leadership space all around that. But for most of my life, it's almost like I keep this tally in the background of,
Mm,
and I always need it to be even or I'm up.
right.
Meaning, um, I can't ask a favor until I've given two or three favors, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
I can't do something for me until I've made sure, have I done something for all those people? Okay, now I can do something for me.
Right.
And some of that actually comes down to, I don't want to be beyond reproach in how I, come into the world. It leads to a lot of perfectionism and things like that,
Mm,
links to imposter syndrome.
yep.
Um, but it's also about control. And it's about,
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like they have the upper hand because in the debt column,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And so shifting then into the coaching space, it's very much about holding the space for the person, but also holding them capable. It's not
Mhm,
my accountability. It's not for me to do. It's not for me to serve and to
mhm.
get the thing done that they've decided that needs to get done. I have to relinquish that. And so
Right.
it's the most lack of control on these kinds of situations I've ever had. So it's
Okay.
been a really big shift for me as a coach to not, just want to dive in there with them. Or
Right.
if it's just a one-off coaching conversation, trying not to convince them, no, we need to do this six more times because I need to see this through with you. It's
Right.
relinquishing that to them and being okay with wherever the tally is. That's some growth I'll continue working on for a long time.
Good for you. Good for you. But it must be freeing though to be letting that go, that
It is.
attachment.
It is absolutely. I just don't know that I'm doing that enough yet. It's
Mm,
it's the it's the maturity in my coaching work that I'm looking to achieve too. And I'm
interesting.
probably in my momming and my
Yeah.
sistering and daughtering and wifing
Yeah. Oh,
a
yeah.
little bit
There's all
more.
the plate spinning. One little thing I'll share with you that has really changed that for me because I too have had that kind of scorecard in my own mind over the years, and it wasn't until, and I mean, I'm going to basically open a Pandora's box at the end of this podcast, so it just means we'll have to do it again. But I have been introduced because I grew up in a non-religious family, and so the idea of death and what happens when we die was never really spoken about. And my parents being atheists, it was just like you die, that's it. And but over the last 4 or 5 years, and it actually came from me having a guest on my podcast who's a medium, and she was somebody who converses with the other side.
Right.
Okay, so I mean, believe it or not, this is what she does, and I found it fascinating, and I went down this huge rabbit hole, and still continue to this day of really trying to understand myself as a spiritual soul that
Hmm.
exists inside this physical frame, and that soul might have been for some people made by a god, or for other people it's made by Mother Nature, and it's to me it's almost irrelevant. It's just this belief that this soul continues on after the physical form dies, which really got me just as I've gone so far down that rabbit hole with this, truly believing that we just don't get one chance at life.
Mm.
and that we
Hmm.
do get, in fact, multiple chances at life. In which case, once I really accepted that for myself, and I'm not here to tell what others they should believe, but once I accept that for myself, wow, it took all the pressure off of having to get it perfect this time around.
Yeah. Okay.
I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, so maybe like as I exit this earth, I'll be on the scorecard down by 3. But when I exit the next life, I'll be up by 6. And
Yeah.
it's really just
Yeah.
playing the long game of like thousands and thousands of lives. And if that were to be true and the soul actually doesn't die, and from a quantum mechanics perspective and a quantum physics mindset, we're beginning to actually prove this to be true. No longer
Yeah.
is it a spiritual notion, but rather a scientific one. I feel like for people like you and I who are always trying to, never feel like we're in debt to others, maybe it's okay if we leave planet Earth this time around and are in debt to a few people, and we can just get their soul back the next time around.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love that. And if nothing else, it's like a little bit, just a little bit of a security blanket around our shoulders that, especially if you're going through loss or something, life is lifing, like I was saying
Yeah.
before. Having that little bit of extra energy or that little connection or just something else that's saying it's okay, this energy is still around you. This will
Yeah.
this will connect you to the next thing, whatever that is.
Hmm.
I love thinking about that stuff. It is something to ponder, but yeah, maybe I'm gonna play with that thought of does that help with my tally?
Yeah, yeah. I'll just drop that on you at the end of this
Yeah,
conversation and let you go.
yeah,
Okay, so now I'm going to go think about whether we continue to live on after our death or
yeah,
not.
yeah. I'll
Um,
tell you, I'm gonna give you one very quick story. I know we're at the end,
yeah.
but you were part of my tally very recently
Uh,
because as part of our connection, there was an opportunity to go to theater.
oh, yeah. Right. 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 Yeah.
And that's normally something I would have said no to 1,000 times over
Oh, really?
because, how gracious of you. I haven't given you anything yet. I haven't connected with you in 30 years.
Right.
And you don't have to do that for me. I couldn't possibly.
Oh,
And this
wow.
is where, my thought was, it's okay if I go, if I, and even
Yeah.
if it's not to you, I can pay that back in kindness in
Totally.
probably 1,000 different ways if I get creative. So it's
Right.
okay. It's okay to say yes. If the
Yes.
offer was made, it was probably pretty genuine,
Yeah. Of course.
and look at the magic that came from that. So
Oh my gosh, you know what? Yeah, just hearing about the smiles that you guys had that night through when I spoke to Freya. For those who,
yeah,
of course, have no idea what we're talking about, when I found out that Sue was going to London, England, I guess it was last week.
yeah,
I have a cousin who works in the theater industry, and I know that she can make someone's evening a special evening with tickets and backstage passes and meeting of cast members and stuff. And to me, I get so thrilled about doing that for somebody. And I'm the exact same way as you. I'm
yeah,
like, I'm so great at making everyone else feel happy. But if someone
yeah,
were to say to me, especially like you said, someone who I'm not in debt to, I would be the exact same way as you. It's like, oh well, I must send over a basket of a basket. I must send a
yeah.
basket over. I
Oh
must.
shoot, were you expecting a basket or
I will.
something?
It's not. Hasn't. It should be. It better be coming
It's on the
soon.
way.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Work on
yeah.
that, please. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely something that's so important. I always remember my friend Annie saying to me, I said to her, I said, as a keynote speaker, I said, I work so hard. I said, obviously, my ultimate goal is to get a standing ovation. And I said, it's not a standing ovation because I want to feel good about myself, but it's a standing ovation for me to say, okay, I gave them everything I've got, and they felt it so much that it made them want to stand up and cheer.
Yeah,
And was
that
always
energy.
that was my standard for, wanting to know that I had done my best. And I said, but the weird part is, I said, as soon as I get a standing ovation, which is not very, it's like with keynotes, it's not an often thing. But when it does happen, I said, I feel so awkward and so uncomfortable. And I said, and so they're all doing it. And I quite often, after like with the first 10 seconds, I always go, thank you, sit down. No, no, sit down, right?
Yeah.
And she told me something that really stuck with me. She said, you've worked that hard for that hour to get that standing ovation. And she said, and they want to give that to you so badly that when you get them to sit down, your awkwardness is taking something away from that they want to feel.
Yeah.
And I'd
Yeah.
never thought of it that way before. And even though I still struggle with it when it happens, there's that part of me who wants to go, okay, that great, thank you. Like, I checked the box. I now realize just sit and let people love you.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be loved. You don't have to be the one who's always doing the loving.
Yeah. Well, because if you come back to our tally, what we're doing is, especially if it's someone that we're around all the time, we're forcing them into a perpetual state of being in debt because
Oh,
we
yeah.
can't receive,
Wow. That's a
right?
mic drop right there. That is okay. That's it. We can't
We
say
got to
anything else.
stop.
We can't speak anymore. That is a mic drop. You're putting other people into debt into you. If you almost over love them, which is weird. Of course, you can't over love somebody, but if you,
Yeah.
whew, okay, that's it. Um, this has been so fun. I
So
ended up
fun.
I looked at the time and I'm like I said to you I might go 5 minutes over. But I mean 25 minutes over. And I hate it when I speak to somebody like this, which is very rare that it happens that it's so easy flowing like this, where I have to consciously cut it off because I know that the bandwidth of human beings is always a certain length. Although I think that in this particular case, I am pretty confident that the listeners and viewers are going to be saying, no, 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 don't cut it off. Don't cut it off. Keep going. Keep going. But you
Well,
know
it's
what?
fascinating for you and I anyway. So,
Well, this has been great. This has been so fun. There have been so many interesting nuggets that I know that people are going to really resonate with. And just thank you for being, somebody who would say yes, because quite frankly, I put these asks out to a lot of people, and so often you'll just either get ignored or people either don't feel confident enough to do it, or they just allow themselves to be too busy to do it. So thank you for being someone who said yes, and thank you for all that you've given to everyone who's been watching and listening today.
well, thank you so much. I'm so glad that this is how our paths reconnected.
This is it.
And, if there's, I'm not sure some of the things that I believe in as far as, or understand as far as energy and things like that. But I do believe that paths cross and things will continue to connect us much beyond our wildest expectations. So
There's
great to reconnect. Thank you for trusting in me to be one of your guests.
Oh my gosh.
I'm honored to be here, and this was a lot of fun.
This has been great. Well, folks, I will make sure that in the bio, the write up, all the stuff that we do with all of our podcasts, that you'll be able to learn all about the amazing stuff that Sue is up to and ways that you can stay in touch with the great work that she's doing as well. We'll link to the volunteering she does and charity she works for, that she does work for. She doesn't work for a charity, okay? Folks, let's not pigeonhole her this way. She donates her time to an amazing organization, and we'll make sure that we link that up. But thank you for all of those who did join the show today, and stay tuned with us in the future, where we have other amazing leaders from the world of business, from the world of art, and from all other kinds of worlds who you just got to meet. So we'll see you soon.